Harry's wife. I'm trying to save them from themselves, Part 1. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. The Telegraph carries a detailed article, which is an interview between Bryony Gordon and Prince Harry. And indeed, we are met with a picture of Miss Gordon and Harry, his arm about her shoulder, over in California. The title is, This is not about trying to collapse the monarchy. This is about trying to save them from themselves. That headline of itself tells us so much. That Harry doesn't realise that he's the one that needs saving. Harry doesn't realise that he's the one that's in the grip of a narcissist. And whilst he's had involvement with them before, his grandfather, his father, his uncle, the fact is this is the most dangerous one. Because with the others, they certainly moulded him to an extent, but he was able to go and do mainly things for himself. Naturally, he complained, as we've seen in Spare, but those moments where he was in the army, he appeared to be genuinely content. And his father allowed him to get on with that. His father was focused on other matters. It wasn't the case that Uncle Andrew was chasing him around, saying, come and be a boorish twat with me. And his grandfather was allowing him to get on with things also. So those three narcissists were not having the same impact upon him as his wife currently does. We, of course, have seen the impact that she has, in that she has turned a generally decent individual with some flaws as a consequence of temper, some entitlement, and, of course, the impact of his mother's death upon him, but has turned him into a boorish, brattish, whining, self-entitled prick that has no insight and is making a complete show of himself with the disclosures that have been occurring in Spare. He can't see how his wife has affected him. He can't see that the majority of the world is laughing at him. He can't see that the monarchy don't need saving, and this is the blindness that has come as a consequence of the influence of his wife, where he thinks, she saved me, I can now go and save the monarchy from themselves. That, of course, is an arrogant and high-handed approach, and, of course, is typical of the way that Harry now sees the world, influenced, of course, by his wife. She, like many narcissists, made out that he was the one that was trapped and that she came along and saved him. Therefore, he thinks, goodness me, she's absolutely right. Here is this kind, compassionate individual who gives me plenty of spicy poontang, and actually she's made me realise that my family were the ones that were keeping me in a cage, although he doesn't realise that he swaps one for an even worse one. And she has now made me see what it was that I was dealing with. Thank goodness she came along. Now I need to save William and my father and everybody else from themselves. They don't see it. I do. I have been given the wisdom and insight, and now I want to share it with them. Does that not sound like a member of a cult? See my earlier video that he is in a cult. That he has been taken in by Harry's wife, he's been brainwashed, and he believes what she says. And he believes, hey, look, everybody, you don't get it, you don't see it. I didn't realise until Megs showed me, but now I can see it, and I want you to see it too. You're trapped by the very institution that you belong to. You can't see it, but understand, I couldn't see it, and now I do. Let me enlighten you. He behaves like the newly converted zealot. Now, that's just from the headline that we have. So let's see what Bryony Gordon, who evidently is friendly with Prince Harry, so I don't think we're necessarily going to see a gruelling interview, but moreover, notice the necessity of another interview from Prince Harry, as if we haven't had enough from him already, and let us see what this tells us about him and how his behaviour and outlook is being affected by his grip in the narcissist. Monty's shit show is on a mudslide alert, its residents nervously awaiting an evacuation order. I wake up on the morning of my meeting with Prince Harry to a media storm. His bug, Spare, has found its way into Spanish shops almost a week before publication, and a meteorological storm, this normally bone-dry part of Southern California, being battered by rain. Both squalls are doing a good job of reminding me that while you may be able to run 5,000 miles from the source of your pain, you can rarely escape from it. Well, indeed, he hasn't run from it, the source of his pain. He sat right alongside it most of the time, because it's his wife. When I finally reach Montecito's most famous resident, and possibly right now the world's, he is nonplussed about the weather, which some have described as biblical, but I might describe as, well, British. Prince Harry tells me that the day before I arrived, he put on his waterproofs and headed down to the beach in the pouring rain with his dog Pula, ignoring all offers of an umbrella from those around him. I don't tell him that I already know this, having seen pictures of said outing on a website this morning. I'm surprised, therefore, that Harry ultimately wouldn't complain about this invasion of his privacy. And yet, even with the threat of mudslides, the Duke of Sussex clearly feels safer here in his Montecito home than he ever did in the royal palaces where he grew up. You could hardly blame him. The house is a sanctuary, surrounded by acres of greenery, complete with chickens, don't forget those chickens of authenticity, a play area, probably for Harry, and a teepee, also for Harry, so lovely that I find myself jokingly asking if I can move into it. I'm taken to a finca-style guest house, where I find a generous spread of crudités alongside umpteen types of tea, served, of course, in the finest china. Soft music tinkles in the background, candles flicker. I wonder if they were lit by an unseen hand. It would all feel very relaxing, were it not for the fact that it is only a matter of hours since the book somehow leaked the Guardian newspaper and went on sale early at a chain of Spanish bookshops. There is some amusement from Harry about how the passages on his frost-nipped penis might have come out in translation, but mostly he is sad and disappointed that the general public's first encounter with the contents of Spare will not come through the reading of the book itself, but via newspaper headlines. In the book, he describes those who work on Fleet Street as a dreadful mob of dweebs and crones and cut-rate criminals and clinically diagnosable sadists. But hang on a second, isn't this the same media that you and your wife regularly court? And that's the more polite stuff. Am I mad to be speaking to him on the day that many of my colleagues are ripping him to shreds, especially knowing, as I do, that he has killed 25 members of the Taliban while on tour of duty in Afghanistan? But the moment he walks through the door, a trail of dogs in his wake, I am reminded of his warmth and down-to-earth humour. Today he's dressed in the TK Maxx uniform of T-shirt and jeans that he writes about in Spare. He welcomes me with a hug and rushes to make the tea. He's bright-eyed, looking far happier and healthier than when I last saw him at Buckingham Palace in early 2020, on his final days as a working member of the Royal. It must appear that Bryony has got him on a good day, because whenever he's appeared elsewhere, he doesn't look very happy at all. He seems relaxed, more free. The nerves he had during our first interview back in 2017 are gone, replaced with the quiet confidence of someone far more at ease with himself. We sit on enormous cream sofas in front of a roaring fire, overlooked by a watercolour painting of a beach. I apologise for bringing my jet lag with me. He looks at it this way. Think of it this way. It's 11:10 p.m. in the UK. You're in the pub. He quickly remembers that I don't drink. Or you're not in the pub, but you're okay. You can do this. And so I switch on my tape recorder and we begin. He tells me that he's someone who likes to fix things. That's the empathic trait of healer, the desire to fix and heal. If I see wrongdoing and a pattern of behaviour that is harming people, I will do everything I can to try and change it. Now, of course, that is something that an empathic individual invariably has, but of course with him it's misguided. He's trying to change people who don't need to be changed, and the one person that could do with change but of course can't because she's a narcissist, he can't see it. He worries about the other spares in the family. As I know full well within my family, if it's not us. And at this point, he points at his chest. It's going to be someone else. And though William and I have talked about it once or twice, and he's made it very clear to me that his kids are not my responsibility, I still feel a responsibility knowing that out of those 3 children, at least one will end up like me, the spare. And that hurts, that worries me. Well, yes, there will be a spare amongst them, Harry, but your upbringing is completely different to that of the upbringing of your nephews and nieces. And that the difference is that their father, William, is a normal, and that their mother, Catherine, is an empath. You had a narcissist involved in your upbringing, and also you lost your mother. And therefore, you have turned out differently, and of course, now all of your views are being coloured by the influence of your wife. The author of the interview article states, I first met Harry in 2016, when I began working with him and his brother and sister-in-law on their mental health campaign Heads Together. Right from the get-go, he seemed to grasp the issue of mental illness in a way that seemed quite unexpected from a member of the traditionally buttoned-up British royal family. I have only wonderful, warm memories of that period, which culminated in Harry coming on my podcast, Mad World, and speaking for the first time about the anguish he experienced trying to process the death of his mother. We developed what I would call a working friendship, which saw me get involved with various Heads Together and Royal Foundation events, and we've stayed in touch over the years. The Harry I have come to know is perhaps best summed up via an anecdote in Spare, where he develops trench foot while out on an army exercise in Wales. He has been yomping through the countryside for several days, with equipment equivalent to the weight of a young teenager strapped to his back during a heat wave. Halfway through, the heat wave breaks with a storm of torrential rain. They continue marching. Eventually he realises that his foot is burning. At a checkpoint, Harry takes off his boots and socks, and at the bottom of his right foot peels away. Medics inform him that the exercise is over for him. But when a staff sergeant tells him that there are only 8 miles left, he resolves to tape his feet in zinc oxide and get the hell on with it. The last 4 miles were among the most difficult steps I've ever taken on this planet, he explains. As we crossed the finish line, I began to hyperventilate with relief. He hobbled about like an old man for the next few days, proud as punch that he pushed on through. Now, of course, it's not something that I think actually caused trench foot, because you need to be exposed to the elements in that way for several days before it develops. But leaving that to one side, the interviewer continues, here we have Harry, or Harold, or Haz, or H, depending on who you are, to a T. You can say what you like about him, you probably have, and throw what you like at him, you may wish you could. But when he feels he's on the right path, he keeps going, through thick and thin and trench foot. What you see with Harry is what you get, a quality that made us love him until relatively recently, when it suddenly became the reason he has come in for so much hate. That, of course, is demonstrative of his behaviour in terms of this indefatigable spirit that he exemplifies, and that when he's, as I've explained elsewhere, when he's doing the practical, his better qualities do indeed shine through. A warm appraisal so far from Bryony Gordon in terms of what she thinks about Harry. Let us see in part 2 of this interview what more she uncovers that will tell us more about the way that he behaves, and perhaps it throws more insight on his behaviours at the current time, or is it simply more of a PR exercise from him on the basis of what his wife wants him to show the world? Let's find out in part 2.